Michigan basketball is simply known as the national champions. And with that, Mike Boynton went off on the haters. We'll get into that and more right here on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Tuesday. We're back in doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today's sports media group. First, we're going to discuss how pervasive the rival narratives appear to be in the aftermath of the national championship. But Mike Boynton's comments to CBS Sports completely eviscerate all of them, pretty much. Then Dan Hurley was very magnanimous after the game. There's a lot of national media pushing back on those rival narratives because they've been that pervasive. Finally, what can next year be? We're going to look ahead. So I'm sure, like a lot of you, you're struggling today. Somehow I'm up and I'm awake now. I went to bed at 4 a.m. I worked until about 2:30, 3 o'clock, and then I went on to Twitter. and then I read a couple chapters. I pretty much finished Eye of the Bedlam Bride. Not that that matters, the book. But I woke up naturally at 7. So, like, I'm sure a lot of you are in the same boat. We're gonna power through, considering it was an exciting night for Michigan to get everything done here as they did. But I was kind of not surprised at all. Actually, not even the least bit, considering what we talked about in segment 3 of the show that we posted at 1 a.m. Just seeing the rival narratives, they've really permeated a bit of just the ethos of college basketball in a lot of ways, to the point where, like, there's people who have tended to come out against Michigan, national voices, Dan Wolken, Ari Wasserman. Wasserman's been less so since like 2021, but who have come to the defense of the Wolverines, and where you just get like a bunch of, I mean, a lot of it is just random accounts, but it's coming from somewhere, and that somewhere tends to emanate from a certain place about 60 miles from where I sit. So, and it's kind of a reflection of their head coach, honestly, with a lot of the things that he said, these narratives that nobody likes Dusty. Yeah, everyone knows that he's a cheater and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, no coaches like him, and it's obvious. And then yet you've got Dan Hurley saying the kindest of things, Tommy Lloyd saying the kindest of things about Dusty, right? There's no backhanded compliments there. So you have all that just to set the stage. But then on top of that, you have Mike Boynton, Michigan assistant, who really went nuts to CBS, and I love every second of it. So let's read and react. I redacted the swear words for the sake of, that's what we do here. He says this, 3 different quotes. I wish people would just write the truth. People are fairly envious of Dusty, and it's because we're doing this. The truth of the matter is most of the people who are frustrated or angry or talking blank online are Michigan State fans, Ohio State fans, because Dusty came in, and instead of trying his hardest to keep away every player on an 8-24 team, he allowed the guys who wanted to leave. And so then what do? Who do you recruit to play at Michigan in April? 6 high school kids? No. So we went out and we tried to be competitive in the portal, and we were. That's quote 1. Quote 2. People just trying to find a reason to bring down what's a pretty remarkable dude, because there's really nothing else to get him on. He's pretty open. He talks to everybody. He works his blank off. He's been successful. And so the only thing is this: when the hate don't work, they start telling lies. And closing out. People making up just complete blank lies about the guys we're trying to supposedly tamper with, like Purdue guard Braden Smith. The narrative was we were trying to recruit Braden Smith at the Big Ten tournament last year. I'll say this: if we could recruit Braden Smith and he went into the portal, we would. But we couldn't recruit Braden Smith because you cannot get juniors into school at Michigan. And people just ran with it. They still run with it. It's irresponsible. It's sad because it's a high enough profile name that it would draw attention. People are just lazy and go with it. People aren't just lazy, honestly, they're malevolent. That's the difference. I've talked a bit, we talk about Jesus on this show. I wear my Jesus is King hat quite often. And I know there's a lot of you that don't want to hear it, but let me explain why this is relevant. Because there is something out there called idolatry, where you worship something that isn't God, and that thing becomes your God. So for the people who are not just like silly trolls that treat this as life and death, and this goes for the football championship in 2023, you get a lot of people who their God is their team. So that's why it turns out to be this life and death thing, right? Like to the point where you get, you should see some of the messages I get from, in football, Ohio State fans. I'm not prominent enough of someone who covers basketball to get anything from MSU fans typically. But you can tell that it goes deeper than just we'll get you next time. Like I always talk about, like what I wish sports could be, just generally fun, because that's what it's supposed to be. So instead, what you get is this malevolence, because you just by nature of wearing maize and blue as a fan, the team being what it is, Michigan basketball in this case, it draws the ire of these people because you have upset their God just by virtue of existing. Thus, they can't let it stand, and they take a perfectly good guy, perfectly good coach in Dusty May, who is better at the things right now that make up college basketball. Because as much as if you like it or not, the transfer portal, NIL, those are the laws of the land. He's just a better evaluator and assembler of a team than anyone else. Michigan didn't have the most transfers. It did have the number 2 transfer portal class, but mostly with cast-offs that had potential, that had come nowhere close to reaching said potential. And then they come to Ann Arbor, and wouldn't you know it, they all work together to reach their potential, right? So it's upsetting to the people who worship their sports team, who look at it and say, okay, we need to bring these guys down. It really is just, as he says, jealousy. Ultimately, it's pure jealousy. And that's why you don't even see a lot of the typical bad actors essentially just, once it's said and done, be like, I don't like it, but congratulations, Michigan. You were the best team in the country this year. You see some, and by them, you can tell, like those aren't the people who are that all in to their sports, which is a good thing, right? Like we should have more than just sports. I say that as someone who makes my livelihood through this. And I think that Mike Boynton coming in, calling all of this out as specifically as he does, noting that this emanates from the MSU and Ohio State fans, and then goes out and permeates through the ecosphere of college basketball, which you just see a lot of, like, it's bad enough that there are multiple national writers and articles coming out pushing back on this after Michigan won the national championship. That's why we're talking about this much on this show. Because also I just want to arm you a little bit. If you're a Michigan fan, you might enjoy a bit of the absurdity. You might not. And if you don't, I want to give you a little bit of ammunition. But it's ultimately just jealousy, because there is exactly zero actual evidence-based allegations that Dusty has done anything nefarious whatsoever. So you can celebrate this with the cleanest of consciences. I can understand if you're a Michigan fan that doesn't want us to talk about Connor Stallions, Sharon Moore, any of these things anymore. We're still going to talk about them. Connor's obviously a frequent guest on this show. But at the same time, it's kind of the same thing even with Connor. Connor was so good at doing what he did that he had to be taken down a peg. Dusty May, they're trying to do the same thing with Dusty May. Not the NCAA. This time it's a what you call it? Not fan curated, but what's the word? I'm just going to go with fan sourced event here where they're trying to do the same thing. And that gives the game away like we've been talking about for a while. All right, we've got to get to Dan Hurley's comments. And I want to read a little bit of Ari Wasserman's article, because there's some interesting things that he had to say to combat some of these things. And they play hand in hand. All of it plays hand in hand. So we will get to that here in just a moment. But before we do, what if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. It's people moving the action, so when momentum shifts, you can move with it. I always knew the game, but never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator. Play by play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood, now available in the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Futures and cleared swaps trading involves significant risk and is not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives, LLC, a registered futures commission merchant and swap firm. Get your first month of the Everydayer Club for free when you use code MARCH. You'll unlock ad-free episodes and entry into our private listener group chat where I'm hanging out daily. Click the link in the show notes or go to LockedOnWolverines.supercast.com to claim your free month. I had something I was going to say. I don't remember. So we'll just move on. Let's get to Dan Hurley. I chopped up this quote just a tiny bit. But again, just to push back on these narratives about Dusty. You've got Dan Hurley completely, like, no one is a hothead, right? Like, I was on the squad last week. Our USC guy was sitting there saying, like, I want UConn to win in the Final Four and lose to whoever they play just to see Dan Hurley lose his mind. Well, Dan Hurley didn't lose his mind. He was pretty, like, not just sanguine, but he was pretty chill just in general. He was magnanimous. He was praising Michigan basketball. So listen to this. This is what he had to say after the game. He was asked about where does Michigan stand in terms of the level of quality of teams that he's played. And he said, well, it's one of the better teams that I've played, certainly since I've been a college basketball coach. I mean, they're legit. They definitely deserve to win the national championship. They're clearly the best team in the country this year. They're just so hard to score against at the rim. I could talk about the threes that we missed, and I thought we had a lot of good threes that we missed, but they just made it so tough on us around the rim. I mean, there was probably what even got us more than missed threes with some of those rim shots. Solos, transition basket. I think they cut it to 4. So could have put some serious game pressure on them. They changed so many shots around the rim. They were just so tall. That doesn't sound like a dude that, I mean, he even like went as far as when they asked about the refereeing, he like joked initially and then was like, he was like, honestly, like I couldn't call a better game than if these guys were our refs for every game, I'd be happy with it. And, you've got a lot of detractors too. I think a lot of them are coming out of stores, honestly, who are sitting there talking about like, oh, the refs gave them the game. And I think it's actually probably not out of stores. It's just some pretext, I guess. But, like that was their goal. Michigan got to the foul line because they took it to the rim. Whereas UConn was going for jump shots. They were trying to do everything they could to make the game be decided in that way. And, they didn't want Michigan to be hot shooting and tried to force Michigan to take it inside and tried to force Michigan into those tough lane shots and tried to get Michigan, who's not always a very good free throw shooting team, who actually was excellent last night, to be under that pressure. It just didn't work. UConn is, I don't have the rankings up here, but they're among the last at getting the line, and they're among the last on the other end. There's a lot of the teams play against UConn. They go to the line a lot. So for those who want to look at the disparity, it's like, watch the freaking game. Understand the context of the game and what UConn was trying to do before you just like, don't just like, it's like the people who are complaining on the Michigan side about Elliot Cadeau against Arizona being like, oh, look at that stat line. He shouldn't have been out there. And it's like, my brother, did you see the 10 assists? Did you see the defense, right? Like, not everything is about like stopping short, pulling up and draining a three. You can have 20 points and not have a great game. You can have 2 points or 4 points. Like, look at Roddy Gale yesterday. Amazing game, 4 points, right? Like, he was like, they don't win that game without Roddy Gale making some of the defensive plays that he made, without making that putback dunk that he made, right? Like, those are difference making plays. So you can't just look at the stat lines. I mean, you can learn a lot from looking at the box score, but not everything. All right. Ari Wasserman had some interesting things to say. I'm going to read the bulk of not his article, but just what I've got here. This is on 3. Some will tell you the spirit of college athletics are dead, that the mantra Schembechler uttered in 1969, the team, or no, those who say we'll be champions, rather, no longer applies to Michigan or college athletics in general. Those people would be right. But the hate that May and the Wolverines have received as a result of how this year's team was assembled, nonsense. Michigan played by the rules and did what literally everyone else does, just better. If you're going to exist in college sports in 2026 and beyond, you need to pay players and you need to take them out of the portal. Those stubborn enough to do things the old-fashioned way will perish, falling short of what this remarkable Michigan team just did. Michigan was a powerhouse this year. It played like a team all the way to the very end, beating up on opponents and overwhelming even the toughest teams, the latest being UConn, on the way to victory. What it did to an elite Arizona team Saturday night, a massacre. The irony of all of this, it's not even like Michigan spent the most. Of the Final Four teams that made it to Indianapolis, Michigan spent the least, less than Arizona, UConn, and Illinois. The other 3 transfers weren't as sought after he talked about Lenderborg for a bit. Cadeau, who scored 19 points on Monday night, was a former top-rated recruit who didn't succeed at North Carolina and was looking for a new opportunity. Mara, a 7'3" dominant big man, was a bench player at UCLA before making a significant impact with the Wolverines. Johnson Jr. also came off the bench at Illinois last season. All of these players came to Michigan and thrived, not only individually, but together. So that kind of sums up a bit of my point here. There's just a lot of this. It's just that Dusty May and Michigan did it the best. And yeah, you had Yaxel Lenderborg, the top transfer in the portal, right? Who would have gone off to the NBA likely if Dusty May had not convinced him not only to transfer to Michigan, but to stay at Michigan. To not, there was no one around this time of year last year that didn't think Yaxel Lenderborg was NBA bound. Like, I'm writing, Yaxel visit stories and whatever, and not for a second really truly believing that he is going to play another year of college basketball. Felt like a pipe dream. And he's flat out told you, Dusty May is the one who convinced him that he should come in and have a year and that it would pay off for his NBA draft stock. And he did it at a fraction of the cost of what would have cost some other teams. But really, it was just the group together that made it all thrive. And I just don't think that people are understanding that. And I know it's a different world. Would I prefer the old world where essentially you have what we've talked about and called the climb? Absolutely. Right? There's no greater joy in sports fandom, in my opinion, than watching your team just make that slow ascent. And that's not what really happened here. It wasn't an immediate ascent. But what Michigan did is essentially no different than what Curt Cignetti did. No, Michigan had more success as a program, Michigan basketball, than Indiana has had in football before Cignetti arrived. However, there's, I think, one player on the Indiana national championship team, the Bennett kid, who was a homegrown recruit. Everyone else from, Fernando Mendoza to all the JMU transfers, Elijah Surratt, to, the CJ Wests and all these other like defensive tackles in the world, their offensive line with Pat Coogan and all these guys, they all were transfers. And no one was saying the same thing about Indiana. And that should tell you something. So, all right, let's talk about what this team might look like next year, because that could be just maybe not just as exciting, but it absolutely could be as exciting. We'll see. All right, we're going to get to that here in just a moment. But before we do, the NBA playoffs are here, where every possession matters, every matchup is magnified, and every game can swing a series. Here's what I like about it. You can bet just $5 and get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. The app makes it easy to follow. I think I missed a thing about FanDuel, but this is FanDuel. The app makes it easy to follow the action with player stats, trends, and matchups all in one place. And during the playoffs, that extra insight really matters when you're looking at stars, role players, and key moments. It makes the entire playoff experience more engaging from start to finish. Listen, you want to get a steal on the Eastern Conference best Detroit Pistons? Well, go right now and take them for plus 1,900 to win the NBA Finals. Or if you just want to pick on them getting there for plus 850. There we go. You get the Pistons versus the Thunder in the finals, which, I mean, I think that's highly reasonable. That's just for them getting there. So much more as well. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. FanDuel, play your game. I am doing better than expected, given that I'm running off of 3 hours of sleep. I almost ran to Dick's to go and get some championship merch, mostly to wear for the show, mostly to wear for the squad. I'm going to wait till tomorrow, but man, it's even more expensive than it was. Like the hats for like $55 or something like that. Like just the typical shirt for $45. Highway robbery, that is. Still going to do it, but still. Just really just to be annoying. But what does the next team look like? Obviously, you've got a lot of players that have decisions to make. There's a growing feeling that Adai Mara is probably NBA bound. That I think tracks after what he did in the tournament. Merez Johnson maybe less so. And he doesn't seem to be as much of a consensus. He was already kind of a fringe. We talked about that about a month ago. He was kind of like the 29th or 30th-ish pick. That's usually kind of a place where it's like, I don't know. And I think he needs a little bit more consistency. I mean, he absolutely can take over games. And I think that with another year, he'll do that. But you got Cadeau, who's already coming back. Trey McKinney, coming back. That's probably your backcourt. Then assuming you keep Johnson, I would be curious to see. There's a couple guys that they're looking at supposedly. I'm not going to go through them all, but Flory Bidunga from Kansas, the forward is who is the unquestioned number one guy in the portal, has Michigan on his short list of 3. You have to imagine that after seeing here's the great thing about it all. Yes, money will come is a factor for a lot of guys. And certainly not everyone's going to be Yaxel. And both off and on the court and just the way that they decide to handle their business. But at the same time, it's like, how can you watch Michigan's run here and be a top player and not want to like be a part of that moving forward? Because proof of concept is there, right? Like you can get other coaches say, we want to do something like that, compared to Dusty May just being like, that's what we're doing. And the fact that they are so dedicated that it was like, at the time this show aired, they were already like on the phone with transfers and stuff like that, or reaching out to their agents. I don't know exactly how that works, but like there were pictures on social media of recruiting staffers already like working the portal as soon as it opened. So that's impressive, right? Just the hey, we just won the top prize. We were ready to win the next one. And with the next one being in Detroit, I mean, that would be incredible. I mean, I would actually go to that because I don't need a sitter for Zuri. But, you know, like, you think you have that, but like, you've got the Blackwell kid who's also a guard at Wisconsin, who's a possible guy. There's a couple others out there. I think there was one big man. I can't remember his name. It's a long name. We'll get more into the weeds with that as we go forward. But I think that already, though, you're already working with a trio that can really get you something. And then you figure it if like, hey, we want another like 7 foot plus guy. If there's no one in the portal that you want, like Malik Cordell now has a year under his belt. And, you know, like the team's development, they've already shown that they can do that. Now, we don't know who they're going to lose. Winters Grady seems like he could be on his way out. Maybe you can convince him to be this year's Trey McKinney, even as a second-year player. But we hadn't even gotten into, because remember how we talk about, especially in basketball, your high 4-star and 5 stars are guys that you expect to play right away. I'm gonna look up something here. And you probably know this off the top of your head. I don't. But you've got Brandon McCoy, 5-star point guard, who can be your backup while LJ Kaysen heals, because he's coming back, but he's considered to likely be a redshirt. You've got Lincoln Cosby, who's a small forward, who also could play kind of more of that Will Shutter type of role at 6'8". You've got center Marcus Moeller, who is 7'3". But actually I meant to say Quinn Costello. Marcus Moeller, we know, is dealing with cancer recovery. But we'll see if he ends up being a factor down the line. Obviously, this next year, he's expected to be in Ann Arbor, but not that. But Quinn Costello's a power forward, 6'10". He's also ranked highly. They've got a lot of options, even of the freshmen, who I think could absolutely play a role. We'll see on the lower ranked ones, Joseph Hartman and Malachi Brown. But I think that they've got some guys that can absolutely play factors as first year players. I don't think you need to go and get 4 transfers this year. I think maybe 2. If everything goes well, maybe 2. And obviously roster management is going to play a role as well. So I think the future is very bright. I think you can get 2. Let's just say 3 just for the sake of it. But like, I think you've already got like the trio that you need to really kind of get things going. And then you can kind of plug in some of those freshmen and hope that they can have a McKinney type year. Be those types of guys that can go out there and hustle like Roddy Gale or Will Shutter. So exciting time to be a Michigan fan. All right, that's going to do it for us today. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Continue to celebrate your Michigan basketball national championship, simply known as national champions. We'll talk to you again soon. Peace.